Hello, I'm Diane Richard, your host. Stay tuned for this presentation on the Veterans Channel. Today we have with us two amazing gentlemen who are strong advocates of our veterans, and they are Bob Fragasso.
Hi, Diane.
And Eric Stieglitz.
Nice to
Thank
be
you
here.
so much. Of Animal Friends.
Yeah.
Animal Friends. Thank you so much for being here. But today, more specifically, we're going to talk about Pets for Vets, correct?
Right.
Right.
All right. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off with a little bit of history about Pets for Vets before we get into the actual, what we do with the animals and how it comes about that they do help our veterans. So let's talk a little bit about how this whole process, how it was a concept, how it came into being. Whomever.
Well, a good friend, Tony Accomando, lifelong friend, conceptualized a service dog program. And I want to quickly differentiate a service dog. The best way to see that is seeing eye dog, trained to a high level of medical intervention, mitigating physical challenges, and also psychological. That is a very expensive dog, trained from puppyhood for 2 or 3 years, costing approximately about $25,000. Tony wanted to provide that for service members who were challenged. And at the same time, being friends, we talked about, it was his idea, talked about rescuing animals from shelters, knowing that I'm on the board of Animal Friends and have been for 25 years. It was logical to start here. So while he researched his sourcing, I researched organizations that supply trained shelter animals to veterans, and there are several around the country. The one that was most amenable to us was the Pets for Vets program out of the DC area. Started now about 11 years ago by a young woman and her family, and then has branched out, very well organized, and they have chapters throughout the country. Not in every state, not in every city, but there are probably a couple dozen or more chapters around the country. Right. So we can refer to each other.
And the chapter we have here is?
Animal Friends, Pets for Vets at Animal Friends.
Okay.
And so contacting them and then making the usual due diligence connections back and forth, and we became a Pets for Vets chapter here at Animal Friends. And so we adhere to their protocol, which is in training of the animal, the placement of the vets, the evaluation of the veterans, and then we apply our own protocol for adoptions, because we want the adopter to be safe and we want the animal to be safe. And that's true every day here at Animal Friends, whether it's to a veteran, the adoption or not.
Or to a family.
To a family, to
That is
whatever. So that was the germination of the program. And then we learned as we went. Pets for Vets, we're the largest chapter in terms of facility and people involved and funding. We don't need Pets for Vets to help us fund. We source all of our own funding here.
Okay.
And so as such, Pets for Vets and we have a great collaboration. They do a lot of their national training here because we've got the facility. We have 2 buildings here on our campus. And so we're great partners together. And as such, if there's a need for a dog placement other than in our paw print, if you will,
Sure.
in this geographic
that.
area, then we can refer out to a chapter that might be closer to the veteran.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Eric, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to add that it's a phenomenal program that's growing here. And Animal Friends and the Pets for Vets program takes 2 tracks. Our chapter embodies the general Allegheny County area. But for those veterans that are outside of Allegheny County, we provide, and in both programs, all fees are waived. We provide our veterans with a starter kit, crate, bowls, leashes, anything that we can do to reduce the anxiety of our veterans. And what we do, as Bob mentioned, is we use the power of our adoption counselors and our expertise in making the right match. Our behavior department with any animal makes sure that the behavior evaluation supersedes any I guess what I'm trying to say is there are some veteran adopters that may want an inappropriate animal for themselves, and we want to make the right match.
Correct.
And what also is phenomenal about both programs is we offer follow-up whenever that veteran calls, and then as a Animal Friends part of our organization, we supply that veteran for the life of the animal 50% off all vaccinations.
Oh, that's awesome.
So all in all, we want to partner with that veteran. We want to make it as wonderful an experience so that veteran can create comfortably that human-animal bond.
And the animal is an enabler, if I could just build on that. Certainly the purpose is for the animal and the veteran to save each other, or help each other at least. But the enabler is allowing the veteran to function more comfortably in society so they can be as productive as they can possibly be, as opposed to being someone who might be reclusive of society. And we have a lot of examples of that that we may get into later. Maybe you want to make a distinction, Eric. You mentioned two programs, and maybe you want to explain the two parts to our program.
Sure. That's a good suggestion, Bob. The formal Pets for Vets program provides a highly trained companion animal to a veteran who is suffering from PTSD, TBI, traumatic brain injury, anxiety, and depression.
Or physical impairment.
Or physical impairment, that is correct. Yeah. And it is a process that probably takes, on average, about 5 to 6 months.
Let me interrupt you.
Sure,
right there,
of course.
Please. What I'd like to hear, and I would like for our viewers to know, the process that the veteran has to go through, because I'm sure that there is probably an extensive process to be able to match the animal with the veteran and also the needs of the veteran.
And I can focus in on that.
Okay.
I want Eric to do that, but I want to suggest in the framing, there's a large body of work that happens way before we get to the point of fulfilling an application. We have to work with that vet and really do our due diligence to make sure that we understand the setting, the need, the emotional and physical circumstance of the veteran. And veterans aren't always ready to go in this instance because they're not sure, or maybe their living arrangement isn't quite right yet. So we've got to work through. That's why it's a 5-6 month process. But
right, absolutely. Bob.
And that's good to know. That's because I guess that's more or less what I was asking. You know.
We stay with the vet all the way through it.
Yeah.
And I think Bob articulated that very, very well. We are a team that is really non-judgmental, and we have certain layers of that team. Under the direction of our president, myself, and a woman by the name of Debbie Meehan, who is our certified Pets for Vets leader, we will engage a veteran after that veteran has placed an application into the national chapter. And it gets filtered to us.
Okay.
We also get veterans to the Pets for Vets front door through the VA hospitals, the crisis center. We are part of the PA Serves network, which is at this point probably 64 or 65 provider list. and we will get referrals from them. Once they come into our purview, the Pittsburgh chapter, we will, when they're activated, we will meet with them probably 5 or 6 times. And that is with the trainer and with a scribe. And we will get, if possible, through this, the essence of what the veteran not only wants, but needs. There are veterans with PTSD that want a certain level of companionship. They may not want a cuddly dog, but a dog that will be a component of the life and vigilant for them. It's very, very difficult to describe the spectrum of needs of some of these veterans. But what we do, and what Debbie does that's absolutely brilliant, is that after 4 or 5 meetings, she takes the appropriate needs and wants of the veterans that will comfort them in the future with a companion animal. And then she shifts this paradigm onto and overlays to find a rescue animal that's appropriate. I keep using the word appropriate. I guess what I'd like to say is she is a soothsayer. Because of her abilities and because of her experiences, she finds a dog that A, is what the veteran wants physically, 2, the capacity of that dog, the ability for that dog to affiliate with that veteran, and also does it meet the physical needs of the veteran. I'm only 17, I think Bob's about 18, but I don't think an 80-year-old veteran would necessarily be a strong candidate for a 1-year-old German Shepherd.
Correct.
So there is a certain level of guidance. We build in a extraordinary amount of time and might go evaluate up to 18 dogs to find the right one.
And we don't just source from our own shelter.
That is correct.
We have, maybe we're going there, we have partner shelters throughout Southwest PA where we help each other, especially the more disadvantaged, less endowed shelters. Not that we're overflowing with endowment, but we're probably better off than the smaller, more rural. And so we will source, if we don't immediately have the right animal, then Debbie will source from one of those partner shelters. And
yeah, and
are the partner shelters outside of the Commonwealth?
no, there's one I think in Ohio.
Right.
Yeah, but other than that, it's Southwest PA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So within a throw radius here of the shelter.
And it's kind of fun to be there with Deb, because you can actually see her build the equilibrium in her, mentally, between the capacity of the animal and the needs of the veteran.
She's an awesome matchmaker.
She is awesome, and I'll be blunt. There are times where I'm like, gee, I think this could be a good fit, and she goes, Eric, I don't know if that dog is going to be affiliative enough. So let me just move along here.
Let me interject just an illustration. I think for the viewers will make it more graphic, I think, and then you build on it. We had a woman Navy veteran that was having interaction problems in society. She was home a lot. Her blinds were drawn. She was reclusive. She didn't answer the doorbell. I mean, she wasn't in crisis, but she was not functioning the way we would like for her to function, to enjoy her life. And so to make that longer story that Eric just described, brought to an illustration, she sourced a dog for her, for this veteran, that would bark when people came past the house or to the house, but wasn't. But we're not sourcing guard dogs for people. That's not the issue. But this dog would bark and alert her. So we do, as Eric described earlier, after visits, we're supportive. We're there for the duration before the placement and after the placement for the vet. So when Debbie went to the house later on, the blinds were drawn, the music was playing, the lights were on, and the dog barked and said hello as Debbie came up the walk. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So that was very unique to Debbie. Maybe somebody else doesn't want a dog to, or has a living arrangement where that dog shouldn't be barking.
Shouldn't be barking, right.
And that's what we have to consider all of it when we're evaluating
That's
the
right.
veteran.
Right. So when you have, so let me just interject this for a minute, this question
Sure,
for a
Bob.
moment. So when you talk about the living arrangement, and I believe, Bob, you said a little earlier, maybe, excuse me, during the evaluation process, you have to take into account the assessment of the living conditions, so forth and so on. What happens if someone, is there a criteria that has to be met for a living arrangement through the whole process of things? You know, what if a person, just say, has a studio apartment? Is that
We're not
something
going to place the
that's-
St. Bernard.
Correct.
Yeah, right.
That's.
But I think there's multi-dimension, if I try to answer your
Sure.
question comprehensively. First, it would be, as you correctly said, Diane, the suitability of the physical living quarters. But it also could be the context of the living quarters. So, for example, the veteran could be living with a big extended family, noisy, small kids. Maybe that, so our normal adoption procedures would take that into account, whether it's a veteran suffering from an impairment or not. Or maybe there are other animals in the house that wouldn't be compatible. Our normal adoption procedures deal with that. That doesn't mean we don't adopt, but we have to evaluate it to see if it's proper.
Right.
Now, we're not Eric said it, we're not judgmental. We're here to be supportive. We're here to help ensure success in the placement. So it could
But
be.
that has to come from both sides.
Oh, it sure does.
That's a-
And the veteran
be a
may not be
balance.
ready. The veteran, there are circumstances, not so much with us, but in Tony's program and others, where the dog has to be reclaimed because the veteran initially was up to it, but subsequently wasn't able to take care of the animal appropriately. In most cases, that's not a consideration. But evaluating that up front so that we don't have to reclaim an animal
Right.
is pretty important. Last piece, or next to last piece, is we had some research done pro bono by a law firm, and even where dogs are not permitted by landlord regulation, service and emotional support dogs are allowed.
That's law now, right?
That's law. And that's a legal opinion that we received. I'm not a lawyer, I'm just simply quoting it. So the animal could, but once again, you don't want the dog to be on the 18th floor of a high-rise
Right.
and only get out once a day.
Right.
That's not appropriate.
Right.
Eric's going to come back and explain the two programs, but in the second program where we don't need, but even in the first program, cats and domesticated bunnies can be the support animal. And that might serve the veteran just as well. There was a Reader's Digest story about a Marine who was going to commit suicide. This was a couple of years ago. And he went out to do it, and an abandoned kitten came out of the bushes and saved his life. So it can be cats, bunnies, dogs. I mean, it gets silly when people want to take their ostrich on the plane. We're not talking about that. So maybe the two programs would be an appropriate thing.
And I know I glossed over this, and let me just jump back real quick, Bob. In the application process, we want to make sure that whatever the living situation, this is going to be the right circumstances for the animal and for the veteran. As part of Debbie Meehan's process, she visits the home with the scribe. She will make recommendations to the veteran where to put the crate, where do the bowls go. And again, there is this thematic that we are promoting this bond. Make no mistake that we know, and Bob can speak to this, that the bond that is created between an animal and a veteran can be life-saving.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know Bob has a number of statistics, about veteran suicides and the displacement of these individuals that are really suffering. I don't know if you want to talk
That's
about
what-
that.
and,
Alma.
and that's what this is all about, helping them.
That is
Helping
correct.
them overcome, or more or less be more accepting of where they are right now in their life with the help and the support of one of the animals.
That's right.
There's a subtle dynamic. Veterans are trained not to whine, and so they don't necessarily come forward and say, I'm in trouble, I need help.
Absolutely.
They keep it to themselves, and they
Yes.
feel they might be criticized or ostracized for speaking and coming forward. We all know that. So the two parts of the program is certainly the Pets for Vets program that we just described and will continue to talk about. The other is a program, and this was not part of the national protocol, but Kathleen Beaver, our Chief Strategy Officer, came up with the idea 2 years ago, and that is we will provide a dog, cat, or bunny, not specially trained, to any veteran free of charge, thanks for your service. Now, if they're low income veteran, again, they have to be able to maintain the animal according to our adoption protocols.
Right.
But if they're low income, we're going to support them. We'll give them food. We'll give them the starter kit that Eric described before. They can have help with low cost veterinary care. We do not compete with local veterinarians. We absolutely don't do that.
Right.
But we're talking about low income folks who wouldn't typically take their animal to a veterinarian, or they have to decide between their food and the animal's
food.
vet care. Yeah.
Right.
So we maintain that, and they legitimately should have their friend. So we will give the dog, cat, or bunny to a veteran free of charge, and if they're lower income, provide support for the duration. We'll also accept the animal back at any time, from any of our adoption, veteran or not, if there's a problem there, and make sure the animal's taken care of. So in those two programs, the veteran on the thanks for your service, no cost adoption, not specially trained, these are the people in some cases who are not stepping forward saying, I have PTS. And I say PTS on purpose because the D
That's right.
is a diagnosis.
Right.
They might not have the
Right.
formal diagnosis,
Right.
but they got it.
Yes.
And they might not even know they have it. I had someone who worked for a veterans organization come up after a talk we gave and said, I didn't realize that I do, because what you're describing is how I'm feeling. So we're going to place, and that can be equally life-saving, just like the Marine who found the kitten. That wasn't a trained kitten, but
Right.
it saved his life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and just as you just, excuse me, I got a little frog in my throat. But just as you mentioned that that particular veteran didn't realize that that's what he was suffering from, there are so many that are like that. I've talked to, I can't tell you, countless veterans who, again, like you said, they don't typically talk.
Right.
But I've had the honor of speaking with so many of them who took that chance, and they sat and they spoke with me, and they let out their feelings. One, Eric, that we had here, and the dog was from here, right?
That is correct.
Dee Dee was from here. Do you know
Dee Dee and John.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interviewed him, and Eric said that he may not want to talk, or he may be a little, little shy, and because he suffers from a disorder. He talked, and he talked, and he talked, and I think it was a case where he needed to talk, and then Dee Dee talked.
Absolutely.
The
And
animal enables that.
Yep.
Yes.
The animal gives the veteran the confidence to be able to let it out.
He had the
Yeah.
confidence that day
Yeah.
that we were
Yes, he
right
did.
out there, and
Yeah.
we interviewed him, and
Right.
he had the confidence that day. That was so refreshing to see. But I'm saying that to say that is what Animal Friends does and Pets for Vets
Exactly.
does.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It helps our veterans get through these problem times, these trouble times that they're experiencing. So kudos.
Well, I think you're going to talk with Todd DiPostino, who does the Veterans Breakfast Club, and I think Carl knows him. Carl's our producer. And he's a history professor, a college professor, and his entire program is based on the protocol of getting veterans to get up and tell their story. And he's masterful at it. But he got a fellow to get up who was a Marine in Iwo Jima, and for those of you who aren't placing that right away, that was 1944. and he was in horrendous combat. Well, you got him to get up and tell that story for the first time. His wife had never heard it. So getting that out is crucial for people in their healing process.
It is. And I'm finding too that although some say that they don't want to speak, they don't want to talk, I had, just quickly, Eric, then I want to get back to your other
wonderful.
part. I interviewed a gentleman, he's 96 years old. His name is Harry. He's a World War II veteran. And his family said that he really didn't talk about, you know, the campaigns and things that he was involved in. Carl and I went to visit him. That frog needs to go.
That's why I'm drinking apple juice.
And we went to interview him at a nursing home. And I sat there with him, and he was a little shy at first. And I spoke with him, and I told him, I said, we're just going to sit here like we're old friends, and we're just going to have a conversation. I said, don't pay any attention to Carl, don't pay any attention to the cameras. We're just going to talk about your experience, because I want to know, I want to learn. That man talked for an hour straight. And it was just, I was just honored to learn that he brought back all these relics from his wartime and these different campaigns, and they are on display at Soldiers and Sailors.
Isn't that fantastic
That's
to be able to
wonderful.
share that with generations that
Yes,
wouldn't
absolutely.
otherwise know about it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, you know, in addition, what we did is we built out a module from the Pets for Vets program, and it's
Okay.
called the Veterans Ambassador Council. And when we talk about veterans communicating and feeling comfortable to communicate, this Veterans Ambassador Council has veteran members, and what we found is veterans speak to veterans. They have a camaraderie, they have a language, there are certain subtleties that will help a veteran. We work with veterans, I don't have to say this again, who have concerns, social concerns. They will look at a situation and it will make them potentially anxious. And what we can do, and part of the structure of this Veterans Ambassador Council, is hopefully within a moment's notice or an hour, we can get a veteran to talk to a veteran. And it's built in to help the veteran communicate with us.
That was a misperception of mine early on when I
sorry.
started to think of what.
No, go ahead.
You're okay. No,
Yeah.
no, I just want to build on your
Yeah.
point. The misperception that I lined up some friends who were psychologists and social workers, and they were going to be the people who would do diligence. Then when we got further into it with Pets for Vets, they said, no, time out. They talk to enough psychologists.
Yes.
They don't want another psychologist
Yes.
to talk to. They want to talk to other veterans, just
That's
your
right.
point.
Yeah.
But see, the common wisdom, at least mine was, okay, we're going to get professionals to talk. They don't want professionals.
want it.
They want kindred spirits who understand
Right.
them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, we've had circumstances where a veteran had a service dog here who really needed some significant medical care. And I would say within about a half an hour's time, that veteran and the service dog was right here at our Animal Wellness Center getting treatment. And this almost saved the soul of this veteran.
Mm-hmm.
So our footprint, sorry to use that word again, but our footprint,
Paw print.
Paw print.
paw print, excuse me, goes into the community. It matches the vision and the mission statement of Animal Friends. So when we, just to track back, so with our programs, we can empower a veteran who wants to pick his own animal. We can empower that person by providing real training guidance for that veteran. And we are covering a spectrum of what veterans want and need.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more immediate in that regard.
Absolutely.
Because you can adopt the same day as long as you've gone through the adoption protocol
Right.
and we
Right.
understand your situation. Whereas the other requires, as Eric said, 5 or 6 months to get
Right.
the trained emotional support animal in place.
And just to be a little bit more in depth, in our adoption process for veterans and for the general public, we want members of the family to come in. We want them to meet the animal, whether it's a rabbit or a cat or a dog. And we want them to spend the time necessary to make a good decision.
And all the empowering that you're doing, I think you're also empowering that veteran to be able to pick him or herself up and be able to have a better quality of life than they had, but in allowing them, empowering them to be able to do it, letting them feel that they have the capability of doing that, which maybe before, in their mindset, before they got the support of the animal, they had lost hope.
That's a point very well taken, Diane.
Yeah, exactly. It also works the other direction. We have a case right now, and we don't do this, what I'm going to describe, on a daily basis. But there's a Navy veteran who has a beloved German Shepherd, several years old. Still a very viable dog, but the veteran is no longer, he's elderly, he's not able to take care of the dog. He's going to need assistance himself. So the daughter had contacted the fellow I mentioned earlier, Tony Accomando, with the life-changing service dogs, the service dog, to donate the dog to the service. Well, no, they have to be trained from early age to be a service dog. But it's perfect for our program, so now we're going to evaluate his German Shepherd potentially for our program, so he has to come, because his desire was another veteran would benefit from the companionship of his dog that he could no longer keep. So it really is a circle.
Well, let me go on the other side of that. When you say what you said, that the dog, taking the dog and for lack of a better word, recycling the dog.
I have a T-shirt that says recycled pets are best. So
Awesome.
go ahead with that.
So recycling the animal. What if the animal has such a bond to that person that they would experience separation anxiety from that person
Diane,
that they've
that's
been
every
with?
animal that comes here.
Okay.
That's right.
Every animal that comes here, they're being given up for whatever reason. Most valid, sometimes invalid, but in most cases, as long as the animal's been well cared for and loved, that animal is dejected to be in a shelter. That's why we want people to adopt.
Right, right. But I guess what I'm asking is, being with a veteran, that you've already put the animal with the veteran, and just say the veteran, like the gentleman that you said, is
Oh, yeah.
old now and needs to have assistance himself. The dog will be taken from him and recycled, but I'm talking about that bond that they have, that dog. Do the dogs ever have that separation anxiety from a veteran that they've been with for many, many, many years?
In all cases, animals will have a dejection, if not outright evidence of separation anxiety, because separation anxiety means acting out. So typically there's not separation anxiety, but the
Okay.
dogs will become, and the longer a dog stays in the shelter here, they're well taken care of. They're walked by our volunteers,
Right.
they're fed good food, they're loved, but they're still missing having a home to
Love.
live in, right? So the sooner we get them placed out, so whether it's a veteran who's giving them up or a non-veteran, the dog is going to go through that experience.
Okay.
Can't be helped.
Okay.
But see, dogs and cats and bunnies, so when I say dog, just assume I'm talking about all three species, are so resilient, much more so than humans,
Okay.
and they'll
Right.
adapt.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And while they're here, we have an enrichment specialist that works with every
Good
single
point.
animal here. There's a certain degree of kennel stress. You can imagine an animal that was living in a loving home. Maybe that owner needed to go to a nursing home.
Yes.
Or maybe it was a significant relocation. We look at these animals as individuals and with individuals' needs. I think Bob made a phenomenal point, and it certainly could be elaborated on. There is a resilience with these animals. And we have a phenomenal core of volunteers that will spend extraordinary amounts of time with their favorites. And when it becomes time to make a placement or an adoption, the dog senses who their new owners are going to be.
They always know who rescued them. They'll always know who rescued them.
There's a great saying, rescued is my favorite breed.
Right.
And it's so true. Animal Friends adopts out close to or over 2,500 animals a year.
Wow.
And each one is delicately and diligently adopted out.
I love the care that's taken in that process. You just don't dole out animals to people who think that they may want to have an animal, and to find that maybe not, and just put them out there
We have
somewhere.
to do it that way.
Absolutely.
If I may, I'm going to take this a little different direction
Sure.
because I think it plays the other side of what your heartfelt sentiments were. We're having a quarterly conference call with a group of shelter directors locally as well as across the state to share best practices. And one woman in one of the larger cities, similar to Pittsburgh, unidentified, but she's a wonderful person who took over last fall. Well, you heard Eric say we handle 2,500 animals a
Yes.
year. That's a lot. They handle 17,000.
Oh my gosh.
And they are also the dog catcher for the city. They have a very high euthanasia rate, simply because they have to euthanize for space.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Nationally, we're euthanizing 3 million animals a year. That's down from 11 million in 1970, but it's still 3 million otherwise good companion animals. So that's why this program is so important. If you think about adoption as a supply-demand equation, there's so much demand, there's so much supply. You want to bring it into equilibrium.
Right.
Equilibrium is a theoretical point, but we want to get as close to equilibrium as we can. Well, one way is decreasing the supply, and that's where aggressive spaying and neutering is
Right.
important.
Right.
And we provide that. We go into low-income neighborhoods. We go to these folks who can't necessarily, they don't have the transportation, and they can't afford to go to a vet.
Right.
If you have $750 a month coming in, you can't spend $250 to spay or neuter your animal.
Correct.
It's not going to work. So we do it for nothing if they're absolutely in trouble, or very nominal cost, because it's important that they feel as though they've contributed toward it. And we'll do that. But we're winning that battle. It's not won, but we're winning that battle. But we have to increase demand. So one of the ways we're increasing the demand is with innovative programs. And Pets for Vets is a perfect example of that. We placed 140 animals last year through both channels of the program.
Wow.
Now,
That's
one could
amazing.
argue that some of them might have found their way to us, but likelihood they weren't.
Right.
Because they were referred by the Combat Stress Unit at the VA, or they came through one of the veterans programs, or through our publicity for the program. So it's 140 animals placed with 140 human beings. That's tremendous.
That's remarkable.
And I
That's
think one of the
remarkable.
things, strategically that we're trying to do with Pets for Vets is to partner with all these veteran providers. Veterans Breakfast Club, Soldiers and Sailors, Saving Our
VLP,
Sentinels.
Veterans Leadership Program.
VLP, absolutely. And we have a program here called Chow Wagon that provides about 1,700 pounds of pet food to VLP, the Veteran Leadership Program. So veterans who have pets can come and respectfully get pet food.
When I took the tour, I
That's
saw
correct.
the room.
That's
the
right.
pallets.
Oh
Right.
my goodness.
Right.
So much food in there for the animals. I mean,
Well, when
that's,
people donate to us, we're fortunate because we have a major supplier
Right.
who gives us our kennel food. So all the donations we get, we turn around and share with the VLP, also with food pantries in the area, and also lesser endowed shelters.
awesome.
So keep bringing the bags and cans in.
Keep it coming, folks. Keep it coming.
Exactly.
It's so community-minded here.
Yeah.
This is such an awesome program. I want to talk a little bit more about, I know, Bob, I know that you are, you have a lot to do with this program. You're a board member. You have given so much to this program. But I believe that there's another individual.
Another individual in his family, Dr. Bill Follensby, who's a cardiologist here in Pittsburgh, lost his son to suicide. And his son was a highly decorated Major, Army, Ranger, Special Forces, multiple combat tours, and no one would have guessed. But he took his life. And so the fund that supports the program is named for Major Ben Follensby.
And both Bob and Bill are the architect of this Pittsburgh chapter for Pets for Vets. They provide incredible guidance, structure, suggestions, and both are tireless workers for veteran advocacy. The number 22, and maybe Bob can speak to this, is kind of famous among veterans that come home. And do you want to?
I think it's an understatement.
That's true.
There was a study done that pinned the daily veteran suicide rate at 22 per day. I think it's understated because it was a 9-state study that was extrapolated out to 50. Statistically, it's accurate, but I don't think it captures all of the suicides. So if we find a homeless person dead under a bridge, I don't know that we trace it back to know that he or she was a veteran and lived their life in such a way that it brought them to that end. Now, was that a suicide? Yeah, a long one.
So what we do and what is the core of our mission at Pets for Vets is to help these veterans, provide an opportunity for them to be more social. If you walk a dog down the street, you might get away from a neighbor. There is a purpose to life, to feed that dog or that cat or that rabbit. Give of yourself, which strengthens your core. We see this almost every day in our programs. We have worked with individuals that were on the precipice. And what we have been, whether lucky or opportunistic, is to help them. In a couple of instances, and not being egotistical, we've saved some lives here.
That's what
We
this is
really
all
have,
about.
Yeah.
and
Saving lives.
and it's incredible to be in a position and facilitate rescuing an animal and rescuing a human being.
Yes.
And I get emails years later that tell, thank you so much, here's a picture of a dog, or here's a picture of a cat. And it's this slow, steady, comforting feeling that is such a catalyst for not only myself, but I'm sure Bob and Bill Follensby and the rest of the program members here.
One of our veterans lived under a bridge.
That's right.
And of course, we cannot place a dog with a homeless person.
Right.
But he met a woman who he fell in love with her, and together they pulled him out, and he entered school, and he was still struggling. And we placed a dog with him, specially for him. And now he's going through school, he's functioning, he's willing to come here and speak. And he now has an internship with a major company in his field of study that hopefully will lead to full-time employment. But that started under a bridge as a homeless man.
That's right. And
that is saving a life.
No, there's no question.
Absolutely.
That is
There's no
saving
question.
a life. And when you say that, I'm sure that you're saying it for our viewers. I'm sure that you're saying saving a life, not just only from suicide, but saving a life that the person can now live.
Perfectly said.
And I think with this specific individual, he will be a contributing member of society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isn't
He is
that
already.
what we want?
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
what we
So
want?
our community goes
Yes.
Yeah.
goes well beyond.
Yes.
You know, it's wonderful because Pittsburgh is such a giving town. It's a beloved town here. And I'm not from Pittsburgh originally, but I just see such love and creative ability for these veterans. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Tony Accomando has the phrase, saying thanks for your service isn't enough. Do something.
That's right.
Truly.
That's right.
Truly.
Yeah.
We all need to do something.
Absolutely.
Because there is a definite void out there that needs to be filled.
Yeah.
And it gets bigger and bigger.
And I just, something came to my mind. Each dog in our Pets for Vets program is hand-picked for that veteran. It's not as much customizing as it is a melding. And I think that's why Debbie Meehan and our team can be so successful for these veterans. This is not a rough shot. Hey, let's find a dog. Oh, the dog looks pretty, and out the
Right.
door. There is a passion and a commitment that eclipses what a general shelter does.
Maybe we can provide some connectivity for the viewers, and that is any veteran who's considering adoption should just contact us. Now, they may need a specially trained dog, and that would be the Pets for Vets program, or it may just be the Animal Friends for Veterans, where we are placing an animal with that veteran. They should just call. We'll talk to them. There's no stigma in calling.
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, our people welcome. Our adoption form now asks, are you a veteran? Excuse me. Our intake form, the beginning form asks, are you a veteran? So that we can then steer them toward either side of the program. And gently we'll ask those questions. Nobody's ever threatened by the conversation. And if you're genuinely interested in somebody, they usually tell you. And that's what we find.
Awesome. Awesome. So what else do our viewers need to know about this amazing program that's helped so many?
I could probably talk to 2 hours on that subject. I'm not
know
going
you
to.
can, Eric.
But I do think if you know a veteran that needs some help, that you think a companion animal may be of service to him, have them call us. at Pets
What's
for
your direct
Vets.
dial number for the viewers?
It's 412-847-7030, and please be comfortable. Please tell veterans that you come in contact with to give me a call.
So you don't have to go through the auto attendant, and then you can come, if you're internet connected, thinkingoutsidethecage.org. Great.
Eric, Bob,
Thank you, Diane, for doing this.
thank you so much for being here and enlightening myself and our viewers with all of this information, this priceless information. And I'm hoping that our veterans will come forward and seek the services.
We hope so too. Thank you for
Thank
spreading
you
the
so
word.
much, Diane.
Thank